I'll bring in my favorite instrument in all of live, which is sampler. Delete that. We don't need that right now. And here it is. There's a lot going on. It's pretty complicated, and but you can still use it without totally knowing how everything works, which is nice. You can do so much with it. The thing that I just love about sampler is it's kind of just totally open ended. I mean, there are certain limitations you get when you have like a synthesizer, say, or just any instrument really. But with sampler, you can just put any sound you can think of in there, and you even when you know how to use it, and it's probably my most used device in live, it's still a surprise every time I put something in. And I'm kind of hoping that um, if nothing else after today, that you kind of leave here feeling like empowered and excited to just put stuff in. And maybe it'll even save you a little trouble or temptation with like wanting to buy new gear or plugins, because you can just do so much with it. So I guess the first thing we need to do really before we can do anything is to drop a sample right here. Um, I'm going to go into, I have a Dropbox folder and I'm not even sure what I'm going to take yet. Um, a nice tip I like to give people is, you know, if you hear cool sounds wherever you are, something that sounds neat, record it. And you don't need fancy gear. You don't, if you have a cell phone, it probably has some kind of voice memo app, something where you can just record sound. Just record it on there. I know on the iPhone, I use the voice memo app. Let's see. It's, it's not going to really, that little one there, voice memo. And I'll just record things onto it. I've got, tons of things that I record. And a lot of the packs I make start this way, even. And it's got a feature where you can export your stuff to Dropbox. I think it might even have like Google Drive and other things like that. So I just have a free basic Dropbox account, and I've got a folder on there that I call Dropbox Ideas. So I export things to my Dropbox Ideas folder, and I've got that folder inside my places in Live. So the cool thing is I can record something, export it from my phone, and then when I open my computer, it's there.
This is actually interesting for me. It's something that I think has been limiting in my willingness to do that, like record random stuff or something. I feel like I felt very like wanting to use wave files and stuff like that. So can you export from these like from the app, like just the voice memo app into that, or do you really concern yourself with file types as much, or what's a good way to approach that?
Okay. I am one to encourage people to just don't even worry about it. I do have like a little field recorder here. This is I really like this little field recorder by Roland. I think just the camera needs to like see my fingers to focus. It's called the Roland RO7. It's I was at Guitar Center the other last weekend, and they were selling these things for less than $100. I haven't seen that online, but at Guitar Center they had them for less than $100, and it's got two mics, so it's stereo. So if I record like a car driving by and I listen back, you really hear it move from left to right. And it's just real fast and easy, and it's so small. It's smaller than my phone. It's a little bit thicker, but this is something I can carry around. I was looking at like some of the Zoom recorders, which are really nice. I mean, some of them have like you can plug microphones into them. They even have like 4-track recording into it. They're pretty cool, but they're big, and I just kind of knew I would never have it on me. I can easily just stick this in a bag or even my pocket, and I have it. Um, but even beyond that, if you even just have a phone on you, you have a pretty decent recorder. It's not, the microphone is okay. I used to say the microphone was really low quality, but Honestly, they're getting so much better that I don't even really feel that way anymore. They're decent recorders. And sometimes, even though they're not like to the level of like this Roland or some of the Zoom things, sometimes those qualities, the more lo-fi thing or even the lower quality compressed audio file, when you put them inside the sampler and you start time stretching them and you start pitching them up and down, interesting things happen to them. So even though you might not have like the proper wave file with like the best mic with one of those windscreens that look like the furry animal attached to it, it's it's still like a decent recording you can work with. And you're better off getting the sound even in a lo-fi way than not getting it at all. The difference is you either have the sound or you don't. And getting the sound, I think, is really important. I've got
Right.
like, yes, someone
Oh
does.
no, sorry. I was just gonna say it's an interesting point also about once you start messing with it, the texture that you might get from a different type of mic, that's pretty cool.
Yeah, yeah. It honestly, like, sometimes like worse recordings actually make for cooler sample based instruments, in my opinion. Like they just have character. Um, I always point to the example of like I have a 100-year-old piano. I don't know if you guys have seen this. It was like one of my free packs here, and you should have it if you have that live pack archive. This is the piano from my house. It's a 100-year-old piano I got at the Salvation Army, and you hear like some of the keys like make like clicky noises like this. Like that's technically not desirable, right? But live already comes with a really nice grand piano. Um, where will it be? Piano, grand piano. It comes with this. It's in the kind of the basic pack, the factory packs. It sounds great. It's beautiful. But everyone has it, and it's kind of like a perfect sound. Whereas this one, there's like tuning issues. There's clicking. Some of the keys make noise. But to me, it just has so much character because of that. Um, so I mean, you could try to make everything perfect. And they already did it for you anyway, so I'm not really sure what the point is. And I don't have a grand piano like that to record, and I don't have probably the pristine $5,000 microphone and preamps that it's all going through. So um, you can really just work with what you have. Uh, I have another piano which is called Mom's Piano. Here we go. Mom's Piano. And this one I recorded with an iPad mic at my mom's house. I was seeing my parents and my family for probably Christmas time one year, and let's see. I'll change this to a sampler. Okay, you can look at the samples, and I just in there the little room where the piano is. I was recording it, and in the other room, the kitchen next to me, my mom, my grandma, and my aunt were having a conversation. And there was a part of me that was like, I need everyone to be quiet because I'm going to start recording now, you know? But I decided not to say that and just live with it. I mean, I'm only recording with an iPad anyway. And I almost didn't even do it because it was an old iPad. This is years ago. So, I mean, it wasn't an ideal recording situation. But I said to myself, I either get this or I don't. I'll have it or I won't have it. So I decided to get it. And I'll turn off like all this delay and stuff. On some of these notes, you can hear them talking in the background. Just gotta find one. There's one. Like you hear all that chatter in the background. It's my mom, my aunt, my grandma having a conversation. And now, although I recorded this on an iPad, it's it's its unique character. It's nobody else has this except now that I give them out for downloads, so lots of people have it. But it's a great way to get your own unique sound, like to kind of not worry about that stuff so much.
That's helpful. Thank you.
Yeah, it's like this like cool layer of ambience in the background. So I love this instrument and I like to use it. And sometimes it just adds that like sense of mystery to your music and gives it just something fresh that this just doesn't have. And it sounds great. Like there's nothing wrong with it. It's beautiful. But this is where the fun of I think sampling comes in. So this is, I know, been like a really long-winded question, answer to your question, but it's a point I really do believe in, that you're just so much better off getting the sound. Don't worry too much about it, because you can start to have a lot of fun with it. And in here, I've got a bunch of stuff. Um, so like I just clicked on this one. It's blowing on a bottle, and you can hear it's people talking. Once we put this in the sampler, though, we can adjust where the sample starts its playback from. So if I press, like when you press middle C, it'll play it back at its normal pitch. And I have it right there. I can adjust where the sample starts its playback. So I might go to like right up in there. We can zoom in so that I can start right at the beginning. I usually like to turn snap off. I find it doesn't really help that much. It's kind of a loud one. We can turn that down over here under the global. Just bring it down a little bit. So, you just got this like kind of cool, like listen to like that bass, like being pitched down like that. It starts to sound really interesting, and similarly, it gets like, especially when you go to like the highest notes, there's just like weird things happen. This would be the normal pitch. So let's say we wanted to make this into an instrument we can actually use and play. I might, I did, I guess, 3 different takes, right? So we could kind of test them out. That one's like a little more like windy. But the thing I do like about this one is you can hear the voices a little bit. And that one to me sounds like the pitch changes. Maybe I'll just go with the first one. And and I can bring the end, so this is where the sample will stop playing. Put it to like there. We can then focus in on it. There's a shortcut actually to zoom in on played region, so that just pulls us right in. One of the first things I like to do is just tune the sample. I have no idea what note that is. I'm playing a C, but all that is doing is just playing the pitch, the sample back at its normal pitch. So there's a couple ways we can do, and I think in this case we can get away with using the tuner. We can just drag that in here. This is for tuning sounds, probably like a standard guitar tuner, but I'll often use it for tuning my samples. And I'm playing a C, and it's telling me that I'm getting like a sharp B. So let me open this up so we can see the zone, understand what's going on here a little bit too. We have this root here. This is saying when you play a C, when the sample's playing back at its normal pitch, what note is it playing? And right now it's set to C. By we're looking at our tuner, when I play a C, I'm getting like it's a sharp B or a flat C. So what I'll probably do here is move this down to like a B. And now when I play that C, it plays it back at like a sharp C. And we can make this a little bigger here. Go to medium. What we have over here in our zone area, this is like expandable, is we have our sample here, and we can add more samples, which we'll probably do. And we have the range of keys this sample will play back on. So since this green bar is all the way across the entire keyboard, it will play back every note on my keyboard or my push here. And you can see which note I'm playing by the little red key. If I were to take this and limit it, I can play my C, but as I play lower notes, I don't hear anything. So we can talk about how that can be useful in a little bit. If we want to just look at my 100-year-old piano, which is set to a simpler, but we can always convert to sampler. I made this originally in sampler. I often like to convert my samplers to simplers so that people that don't have sampler can still use it, because sampler requires live suite and simpler is in all versions of live. So when I turn this back into its original form in sampler, what you can see on this piano instrument is I sampled every single key, just about. I think just about anyway. And I just put each key to correspond with a note, and for each, so we can see like each sample. As I just scroll through these, we can see each individual sample, and you can see the root that it is. So as I put these different samples in, I just tell live what note it actually is. And I can move tell it, it's only going to play this sample when I play this key. Right? So when we go in here, since I only have one sample right now, I'm going to keep this on everything. So I'm playing my C. It's still sharp, right? So we've got the D tune here. And since this is telling me it's somewhere around the high 30s or 40s, and it looks like it even gets a little higher in pitch towards the end, I'll bring this down to about like, say like 40. Now we're like roughly in tune. So now I kind of know if I play a C chord here, it's the same notes as another instrument. So I know that now this is going to be more or less in tune with any other instrument I use in live. Now, maybe I don't want this to just end here. So we can play around with the sustain mode. And if we look at the sustain mode here, this is saying the sample will play and it'll stop when it gets at the end. This sustain mode is a looping sustain mode. And as soon as I click on that, we get these loop brackets. Let me zoom out a little and just pull these guys in. And we'll zoom in on played region. So now what's going to happen is it's going to loop the sample. And if you remember, we had that kind of, the end part sort of got a little bit higher in pitch. And you can see it gets a little sharp towards the end. So maybe what I can do is only loop to about here. And you're probably hearing there's a lot of clicking going on. And we can solve that with the crossfade parameter. So when I do that, you'll notice these crossfade indications come in. And what that's doing, rather than just as soon as it gets to the end of the loop and just starts over, it smooths it out a little for us. And it kind of reduces that clicking. And we can move this around till we find the spot we like. But I think we're trying to keep it in tune as best we can. So we might go with that. The other sustain mode is a back and forth kind of ping pong loop. So it'll go forward and then it'll go backwards. You can see that orange line moving back and forth. Sometimes this makes for a smoother loop. In my mom's piano here, I have this set to loop back and forth. And part of the reason I wanted to do that was that so you'd hear like the piano play. So let's see if I can find one with some talking on it. It's got the voices in it. So we get that like reversed piano after it plays as I hold down the key. And also those voices are kind of moving around too. Play it at the original pitch. Now it'll go backwards. And, that was just like a fun effect I wanted to have on this instrument. Makes it less authentic sounding, but it also gives it like a fun, like kind of weird, trippy feeling or something. We got our bottle instrument going right now. Let's see. So those I would say the basic ideas of this part, the sample page. There is a reverse feature, which is kind of cool if you are into that reverse thing. So you can reverse the sample, and that would work again like on say like this 100-year-old piano. If I find this middle C right about here, this sample, I could reverse the sample so it'll play backwards, which is, I think, a cool sound. And, so all of these are just playing backwards. And that's a really fun way to make your instruments too. Reverse them and get all those cool sounds that way. It doesn't really seem to make much of a difference on a sound like this, though. But what is kind of cool is it starts from the end of the sample, and we get all of that kind of chatter in this case. Those people talking. And then it loops in tune over here. Looks like it goes a little bit out of tune there. So I don't know, I think that's kind of fun. So far, so good. Any questions or anything? Oh, there's chat. Okay, cool. So we got the note on key. Nice.
What's the release mode?
Okay, the release mode. Good question. So that tells Live what to do when you let go of the note. Right now, we don't have any release. So we can go from this tab over to the global section, and then we get our attack, decay, sustain, release envelope. So with this, we can add a release. We can add some time to it. So now when I let go of my keys, the notes last like about 2 seconds. I'll make it nice and long. So right now, since I have no release mode, it's just looping until it fades out. But I can tell it to play to the end of the sample right here. So you'll see I'll hold down a note, and as soon as I let go, it'll play to the end and stop. And it just goes away. This mode will, what we get here is it'll play back. We usually get a loop. Where's the
You're
loop?
in reverse mode.
I'm sorry?
You're in reverse mode. Or your reverse is on.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So in this case, we can hear the end. As soon as I let go, it'll play to the end there. Now, when I click This mode, we can set a loop point for the release.
Ooh.
So I could say I just want to like, I don't know, whatever this is, right? We'll find out what that is in a second. And just like before, I could set up a crossfade for this. So let's see what happens. It'll play till it gets there and loop over that. So I'm going to just turn this up a little bit longer so we can actually hear what's going on there. So we can have that kind of weirdness going on if we want. Bring it down just a little. So this will sound really crazy. And like right now, it's it's doing that. We could have it play back and forth too if we just switch, just like with the other loop. It just sets a looping section for when after you let go of the key. You can have a lot of fun making all these weird instruments this way. And detune, I think, is for the release portion. So you can actually detune the release portion. Which is weird. I guess there might be a time you want to do that. I'm not exactly sure what, but could be something. But it's kind of fun to get this little chatter. There's so many things you can do. It's really wild. Let's see. Maybe let's put something else in here so we can just kind of work with more than one sample. I'll go back to my Dropbox. Let's just see what I got. Move this open. Maybe this would be kind of weird, right? Coffee bubbling. Sure, what the heck? Let's just see. So we can like hear this pitched out. This is, so what I've done just now, I did that kind of quick, but we can mute different samples. We can solo samples here. So I'm just muting the bottle and we can listen to the coffee. And there is like a tonality to it. It's not picking up in the tuner though, you might notice. It's just not quite enough for the tuner. So in a case like this, we do have a couple choices. We could not even worry about the tuning. And if we don't want this to pitch out, which was sort of my original intention, we could take the scale here. The scale control determines how this will be pitched out across the keyboard. At 100%, when you play, it'll pitch it out like evenly over the keys so that when you play a D, it plays a D. When you play an A, it plays an A. You can go beyond that and it'll be like stretched even more. It'll exaggerate the stretch. You can under exaggerate the stretch. Like backwards, as I play up the keys, it gets lower. And you can even make it at 0 so that every key plays the same note. That was kind of what I intended for this, because I thought it might be kind of fun to just have this sort of like texture underneath here. So when I play this, we just get that kind of like rustling beneath there. Almost like you would get with like record crackle or tape hiss, but instead of using like a sample of tape hiss or record crackle, I'm using coffee bubbling just to get a different feeling. If I wanted to tune this though, and the tuner's not picking up on it, which is happening, I can hear that there's kind of notes in there. So I might see if I can tune it with the EQ. Now I got the EQ open here. And one cool thing about the EQ, if you look at this little blue box, as I move the mouse to the right, it tells me what frequency I'm at. And it also tells me what corresponding note that is, what pitch that is. And as I go up, it's decibels. So when I play this coffee sample, I can kind of look for like where my peak is, and it's somewhere around A sharpish. When I hover my mouse over here, A sharp, that's an A sharp also. So that's probably the tone we're hearing. So I'll set this root here to A sharp. I'll go the other way so it doesn't get so low. A sharp. So now when I play a C and I hover over that peak, I'm reading a C down there. This is one way you can tune things that aren't showing up in the tuner, because the tuner doesn't always pick up stuff that's like this noisy. But I mean, this could be an instrument on its own, right? It's kind of neat. Kind of this like distant we can make that its own instrument. But we'll go back to here. We'll bring back the bottle. Now the bottle is so much louder than the coffee, so we don't even hear it. So I could turn down this sample with the volume control here. And if I wanted to, I could turn up this if I need to. Maybe just a little bit. So I've got this like layered instrument now with a little coffee bubbling sound and a bottle blowing. Just two weird sounds. Oh, let's see. We can go inside sampler. Inside, we'll start with the filter global tab, because this is kind of your more synthesizer based things. As we mentioned, we have our attack, decay, sustain parameters. So maybe we want this to like fade in like a pad. We can raise the attack. It's got a kind of cool sound. We could even bring that down. We could lower the sustain, maybe a little more attack, and then we'll get like little plucks. So basically what starts happening with sampler, after you get the sample where you want it, you kind of treat it like any kind of synthesizer. It's up to you what you want to do, what direction you want to go. I might go in the pad direction with this one. Then I can go over to my filter, and we could maybe filter some of that stuff out. Maybe we could even go into our modulation and apply an LFO to the filter. So we can turn on LFO 1. Sampler gives you 3 LFOs, which is pretty cool. Maybe turn up the filter a little bit. So we're telling this LFO, this low frequency oscillator, this sine wave in this case, to move my filter frequency. For whatever reason, it goes up to 24. I don't know why 24, but 24 equals 100%. And 0 is 0%. I don't know. I don't understand that scale. I'm not sure what the reasoning behind that is. But say I wanted to just affect it a little bit. And you can hear it's moving my filter. It's giving me that kind of like wave sound. I can make it go faster. Slow it down. I was picturing something nice and slow. You could change the type of wave you want to use. A saw down will be much different sounding. Speed it up so you can hear. Saw up. You know, whatever you like, however you want to treat it. I think I like the sine wave a little smooth for this. Our filter, our sound is kind of almost like water coming in on the shore. Modulation stuff. So, okay, I see there's some questions in here. How do you save the sampler for an instrument you can find again in the future? Which is a great question. So we named it, this is called Bottle because that was my first sample was called. If you just click on the save icon, when I do that, it will take that and it'll save it in my user library under sampler. And it's right here. So all I have to do is hit enter. And Live is saving this. Taking a nice long time for some reason. This is making me nervous. Doesn't even take that long. There we go. So there it is. I could put this is kind of like a windy sound, so maybe I might move it. Just drag and drop it into my winds folder. And there it is. And anytime I want to use this in a new project, I can just drag that in. And there it is. Nice. My little bottle instrument. So let's see. Yeah, cool. It is cool. I highly recommend you do this. You know, when you make a sound you like, whether it's even if it's like an audio effect where you like the settings on, save it. You know, like let's say my audio effects, I'll go into the new chorus ensemble, right? And it's just an update on the chorus device. It gives my instrument this really nice dimension to it. I'll add warmth, say, and maybe a little width. I'll put on the low pass. I'm just putting stuff on here. And let's just say I really like this particular setting. I can, if I want to, if we right click, we can do rename, which is also Command R. Command R is really good, or Control R on Windows is a really good shortcut to know because that's how you rename everything in Live, from track titles to presets to scenes, clips. Command R renames stuff. So maybe I don't know, I like this. I'll call it Mellow Chorus. And I can just right click and under Chorus Ensemble and my user library under presets and audio effects. There it is. I hit enter. I could rename it here if I wanted to too. Hit enter and it's there. And I have that now. Anytime I want it, I can just drag it onto a track. It's a great idea to build your own kind of library of sounds. I would even recommend some kind of indication of, so you know it's yours. So you might notice like I like to use BF on my stuff because my initials, I'll just Command R. I can rename it in my user library even. I might just do like BF Mellow Chorus. And now I just know that, and if I'm looking for like a preset that I made, it has BF next to it. So when I'm like in my audio effects chorus and I'm looking for something, I was like, oh, BF, that's mine. Or even better, I can do the search function. Command F gives me search. I can write BF. And then everything that has BF just shows up. So I can just look at all my sounds and nothing else. I use that all the time.
Hey, Brian, I was asking, and I might be misremembering, can people make drum racks right out of sampler?
Drum racks out of sampler.
Or do you have to make all your individual samples and then create your rack?
Well, you can do this. You can group to a drum rack. So when I do this, it puts this sampler inside a pad. Is that what you mean?
That's exactly what I was asking. I didn't know how to ask it.
Yeah, that's it. It's a great little function, group to drum rack. You could also just have a drum rack, and then you could just drag the instruments, that cell or whatever, and right in there, and it'll be here. You could drag them right out of your your library. So let's say I don't know, I like two-way booms. I can just put that in there. Whatever that is. I don't even know
What
what
if
that is.
you had a longer sample that had maybe 10 sounds in it, like you were making a whole cup of coffee and you had the spoon and the cup and
Yeah.
some clicks and pops and the kettle. Can you go directly from the whole bunch of samples in a long sample and sampler and then take each of those in to a drum rack? And then you'd have your coffee drum rack.
If I was going to do that, though, I'd probably use Simpler. Because in Simpler, we could take, I feel like I have something like that actually, too. Maybe I just didn't save it in here, or it's like, all right, so here I am beatboxing, right? Notice, though, one thing that's cool about this beatboxing, it's like everything besides the beatboxing. I remember this night well, actually. I was just walking. I think I was walking my dogs, and you can hear like the crickets in the background. So that's just one cool thing about recording stuff. That was probably right off my phone or onto this little Roland. But if I go into slice mode, I can set it probably to transient was what I want here. And I might just adjust the sensitivity so I'm only getting my actual beatboxes and not just other noises. And you can also just like kind of double click where you want them, and you can insert new slices that way. So we can, say I don't want this one. I can just double click on it. I don't want that one. I want this. And now what I can do is right click and slice to drum rack. And this is the best way to do that. And now it's all in a drum rack, and I've got all those. I can make a much better beatboxing thing than I could with my mouth. Yeah, and the crickets add like just this kind of atmosphere. Gives you like a little feeling to it. Let's see. So we talked about that. So here's something I wanted to do, and this is a lot, but it can show you the power of the sampler. So I made this classical guitar instrument. I'll let you hear it. It's a little too low. So this is a classical guitar. I sampled the classical guitar, a million samples. So let me, I'm going to put the effects down. Let me show you what's going on with this. This is a very complicated, probably the most complicated sample-based instrument I've ever made. And what I wanted to do for the Music Production Club is to give this to you guys. This is one I sell at the store, but I'm going to give this to everybody, to go along with this video, so you can kind of use it as like something you can dissect. So I do this pack comes with the sampler version, and there's also the simpler version in case you don't own a sampler. or on standard or something. But this is just it uses so many of the features of sampler that I just think it's a great, if nothing else, even if you don't ever want to use this instrument in your music, it's a really interesting way to just see like some of the potential you can do with this. So I thought I would just kind of go over it a little bit quickly to give you an idea, and then if you want to, you can just play with it and have it, or if you want to like go and dissect it and see how it was made, it's something that might be useful as an educational tool. And I would say, just as a side note, any of these, like anything, any presets you get, any of the stuff in the live library, if you think it's like a cool sound or you like the way it works, um, treat it as like something you can open up and see how it's working and try to like reverse engineer it a little bit. There's some of these devices are like a master class in how to use the devices and how to set them up. And I'm hoping that this classical guitar is sort of like that for you. So I'll put out an update for the whole club so everyone can get this one. It's a fun thing to play with. So, okay, Jack, thanks for showing up. I saw Jack is heading out. Good to have you here. So let me explain how this works. I'm using, you can see I've got racks within racks here. The main rack is right here, and I've got the classical guitar on low velocity, medium velocity, and high velocity. And what that means is, so in order for a guitar to sound natural, it's got to sound different like every time you play the strings, right? Every time you pluck a string on a guitar, it sounds a little different. So when you play it quiet, it sounds one way. When you play a little heavier, it sounds one way. So I'm just playing the same note over and over again. But we're getting different samples every time. I went through the guitar, I sampled every note of the guitar 9 times, or I didn't do any of the sharp notes. I just did the natural notes, but I did each sample 9 times. I did 3 quiet ones, 3 medium ones, and 3 loud ones. And right now, if we look at the low, that's what it says there, low velocity, we can see this is a sampler that has all of those low velocity or like softer plucks in there. And it's all set up. There's 3 possible samples for every single note. And the way I'm doing this is when you play at low velocities, there, I can show you this too. So I've got this set up inside my chain as well. You can have the, since I have 4 different chains of this instrument, I'll get to the last one. This is a finger noise one. I'll get to that last. You can tell live when I play at softer velocities, I got the velocity here, from 1 to about 41, it's going to send the MIDI to this low velocity sampler. So we'll hear the lower velocity sounds. Maybe just to illustrate that, I'm going to send a velocity device right here. And I'm only going to let this output low velocities from about that range. So no matter how hard I press the key, I'm only getting this low velocity. And we're going to also just turn off our finger noise for a second, because that's going to distract us. So every time I play this note, I get one of 3 possible samples. And that's because I have this selector set up so that each of these 3 samples, this is the selector, and we can determine wherever this light blue line is, it will play anything that's in the dark blue. So I've got this light blue thing, this sample selector. It's being modulated by this LFO. And I'm using the noise, which is essentially random. So, and it's happening at a pretty fast rate, and it's affecting it 100%. So really what's going on kind of behind the scenes is this thing is just kind of zipping around randomly all over the place. So that means when I play a note at low velocity, I'm getting one of these 3 samples. 1, 2, 3, one of these guys. One of those plays back at random. And I'll show you what it sounds like if I disable that. I'll turn off this LFO. And I'm going to just put on the repeat on push. It's the same sample playing every single time. And it starts to sound like mechanical and robotic. When I turn on this LFO, we should hear more variety. So here you get like different sounds. Turn it off again. Very robotic, mechanical. Turn it on. 1 of 3 at random. So I'm using this LFO to randomize which sample is being selected with the sample selector. And that's what I did for the medium volume or the mid velocities. It's the same exact thing. There's 3 of each note, and they're all being randomly generated by this LFO with the sample selector. And there's also the same for the high velocity. Now, this means that, and I'm going to get rid of this velocity device. This means when I'm playing my instrument, oh, I got repeat still on. Depending on how hard I press the key, and then also a random factor, I get a different note playing, 1 of 9 possible notes. So if I put repeat on now, it gives me 1 of 9 possible samples depending on how hard I press the key. So it's giving me much more variety in my playing. I can play like just a chord on repeat mode here. And it'll always sound a little bit different. And that, I don't even know how many samples this is. So if I just select them all, it might tell me here. 75 times 3. So what, 225 samples of guitar. Like that's how many are going into this. Now, what else do I have to show you? Now I have the finger noise. So one thing about guitar is it makes noise. You move your fingers around and you get finger noise. So if someone was playing guitar like this, you would definitely hear finger noise. I have it muted right now. So I wanted this to sound more realistic. You try to minimize your finger noise when you're playing, but it gets through. So I've got this finger noise thing here, which there are all of these random finger noises. And I can let you, we'll go into the samples. We'll show our samples in browser. These are just what they are. I just recorded a whole bunch of those, just moving my fingers around. And the result is when I play the guitar, I'll mute everything else. We get these finger noises happening. And the finger noise frequency is right here. And that is being controlled. So it's kind of a slick little thing I got going here. If you notice, these samples, they'll play no matter what key I play. But we got the sample selector. It's doing the same thing. It's randomizing which finger noise sample will play. So this LFO, again, is just basically zipping this around randomly. This finger noise frequency control determines how often you'll hear finger noises. So if I have them just playing, I'll play a whole bunch of notes. We don't hear too many of these because I got it down to 1. So I don't even hear any. As I inch this up, we start to hear some finger noises. And by the time I bring it to 10, we hear them a lot. The way I did this is, let's hide the chain here so we can see everything. This control is affecting the random of my velocity. So I've got this velocity device right before the finger noise, and it's limiting the velocity reaching this sampler to just 1. And if we look at the velocity here, at 1, velocity of 1, which I'll set it at now, nothing gets played because none of these red bars are showing up over 1. If I were to move these over, we'd start hearing them eventually. Eventually that one will play. There we go. We heard it. Little noise. But as I add random to this, it's going to randomly add a velocity value. So sometimes it just plays 1, sometimes it adds. And the more range of random I give it, the more likely it's going to end up in over one of these bars. So we're more likely to get a velocity noise. One further little detail I added to try to make these finger noises more realistic is if you use the MIDI note length device, normally it's on trigger on, which it triggers a note when you press a note. When you press a note, your MIDI keyboard sends out note on values, and that gets sent to an instrument. But you can use this device to only send the note on a note off value. And a note off value is when you release your hand from the keyboard. So the way I have this set up is you won't hear a finger noise until I release the key. So I can play a note, and now I might get a finger noise when I release the key. I didn't get one. That time I did. I got one there too. So I'm triggering the sampler on the note off. And this is really useful for the guitar thing because the guitar finger noise happens after you play the note and you're moving to the next note. You can hear those in the background. I can crank them up a little bit so you can really hear them. Where finger noise, I have a volume control for that particular chain of this instrument. It just gives it a little more realism. It sounds like someone's there actually playing the guitar. And that happens on the note off. This note length device with triggering on the note off is handy for things like maybe like a piano. You play a note on the piano, and then when you let go, the dampers hit the strings. So you could record the dampers hitting the strings and have them only get triggered on the note off. So you play the notes and like maybe one sampler releases the piano. And then when you let go, the dampers, you just record those sounds. So if you ever like make a sampled instrument that you want to make some kind of noise when you let go of the key, this is a really cool device to use. The note length set to note off. And it's all just kind of racked up in here. Dynamics controls the velocity sensitivity. I think that's on all of these instruments. So yeah, it's this parameter, volume to velocity on all of these. So it just determines how sensitive this instrument is to your playing. So at 100%, it's really quiet to really loud. I kind of decided like I liked about 35 or so. But you can make it much more if you want. Release time is how long the sample plays after you let go of the key. This is usually it's like even if you kind of are playing staccato-y on guitar, there's still a little bit of time. The sound kind of resonates in the body a little bit. And there's a reverb. She could turn off. I've had it on the whole time. they call. So this, I think, is just a nice example of what you can do. You can go pretty wild. This was a painstaking recording session, and then the chopping of the samples was a lot of work. But you know, I have it now, and I can play things on here that I can never do. I can do it like, you know, you can program MIDI, like you can't play stuff in real life this way, but it's also kind of nice. It's just fun. It's a fun thing to have. So when you make these, you have them forever. That's the beauty of it.
That's really amazing. I can't. Oh. How long did it actually take you to? Well, there's the two phases: the sampling, the programming.
Yeah. So the sampling, I don't know what took longer. The sampling took a while. I tried to keep noises to the minimum, but there are definitely samples you can like hear me breathing on. Sometimes you just hear like a little bit of breathing. I felt like that was kind of okay. You know, again, like kind of like the mom's piano thing. I did want it to sound realistic and have like some of the flaws that you would get naturally.
Yeah,
But that's just why there's finger noise in there. But I tried my best to keep it kind of silent. But it's kind of hard to like record a sample while you're holding your breath, and then especially when you're over and over and over 275 of them. But I bet probably the chopping was hard, and it took a little figuring out how to just get this to work too. You know, I knew I could do it, but I kind of needed to do it to know how I was going to do it, if you know what I mean.
yeah, yeah.
Sometimes, yes,
Amazing.
sometimes
Well,
you got to just go and you'll figure it out.
yeah, really impressive.
I hope you guys enjoy it. I'll once I get this video edited for everything, and I'll put this out. It'll just be maybe a couple days. I'm hoping by the weekend I'll have this up for you guys so you can check out this instrument and everything. Yeah, it's a lot of work. It takes a lot of time. It's fun, and you have it forever. So, like, you know, all this stuff. I could upload this bottle instrument if you guys like to. The one with the somewhere in here. They're the 2 layers of bottles. I think it's this one. That's a nice instrument, you know, now that I listen back to it. I think it sounds pretty cool. It's got emotion, you know. There's stuff going on. I'll make some macro controls so you can maybe adjust like how loud you want the bottle, how loud you want the coffee. Oh, good. I'm glad you guys like it. So yeah, I'll put that up for everyone. And do you have any questions? Is there anything maybe I didn't cover, or you want me to just clear up with sampler or any of this stuff?
Could I ask something? When you're making a drum rack, would you tend to use a simpler before a sampler, or what would be your preferences there?
Well, kind of depends. Probably generally, like if I'm making like a drum rack for drums, probably simpler. And the reason for that is simpler has just some nice features. Like if you remember when I chopped up the beatboxing, there's one of these here. It was just really easy to I don't think you can go back from here. You can't go back to the simpler, but it was just really easy to set the slices and then say convert to drum rack. Sampler doesn't have that way of working. Also, simpler has this one shot mode, which is really handy for like drum type sounds. So let me just find like an actual beat. So what one shot means is it'll just play the sample at full volume until it's over. So however long I say this sample is, it just plays it. And I can actually put a little fade out on it if I want. You know, you might be playing with this beatbox and you might not want all those crickets in there, so you can we don't even really hear crickets anymore. They're probably in there, like affecting the sound, but you know, it's so I think simpler works a little bit nicer for this kind of stuff. You know, the real strength of sampler is that it has all of these, the ability to put more than one sample in it. It also has some modulation things in there that and some MIDI control stuff that simpler doesn't have. It's I couldn't really make the classical guitar instrument using simpler because I have so many samples in here. But as far as like drum racks, yeah, generally simpler works. It's kind of the way to go, I think.
Thanks.
Yeah, no problem. But experiment, you know, there's probably cases where you want sampler in there.
This is, I only got Live 10 Suite recently, and I think so I was excited to use sampler, but I found myself getting a bit lost when I was doing drums in it because there are so many options.
Yeah.
So maybe the simplicity of simpler is actually the way to go with that.
Yeah, it's nice that it is simple, you know. Sometimes yeah, the complex, sometimes it's nice just to have something that's just straightforward and clear, and I think simpler is really nice for that. It's one sample. It's nice and simpler that you can like expand it and just see it nice and big. You can't do that in sampler. You get to see just all these parameters in one page. Get your filter here, and everything you kind of need is just easy to access. And these modes are, you know, classic is more like sampler, but one shot and slice mode are really handy for drums and things you want to chop up. So, you know, different tools for different jobs.
If I could ask another question about just saving or just presets, because we were talking about that earlier, but I was wondering if I've created an instrument and I have all these audio effects on it, and I haven't put any of that into a rack, but I'd like to save all of that together. Am I able to do that, or?
If I think the easiest way is to group it into a rack, and that's just a matter, you know, if we just have this instrument here, well, why don't we use the chorus I made, right? Like, just say we have a whole bunch of effects. We put a frequency shifter too because we felt like it. We can just select them all and group, and that puts it in a rack. And then it's all one contained thing. But if you don't want to do that and you want to keep everything separate for whatever reason that might be, you can actually save these entire tracks. So let's say I'm in my current project, I can just take this, and this, when you drag a track into Live's browser, it makes it into its own live set, and you can just drag these in. And there it is. So it brings the whole track in. That's something you could do. It even works. Yeah, it's an option, I guess. Once I save this, when you open up when you look at your live sets in your browser, you can actually just take the whole track and just drag this whole track right into any session that you're working on, and everything that's in there will show up, and all the controls. If you had sends on there or anything, it'll all get remembered.
Nice. I honestly, I had no idea that group setting was there. So that exactly solves my problem.
Oh yeah, that's how I like to work. Yeah, it's Command G or Control G, and then you have your group. And the nice thing about this is you get these macro controls here, And you could say map the dry wet to macro 1, and this dry wet to macro 1, and whatever you want, the filter here to 3, right? And then you can just close it up and it's nice and tidy. You can play your instrument and add and take things away. In Live 11, you don't have to even look at all of them. You can just look at the ones you use. So yeah, that's how I generally save my stuff, and I'll make this stuff available to everybody, like this bottle instrument, and I'll probably put it in a rack, so it's just got some controls that are just easy to reach, things you might want to use often.
Super cool. Thank you.
Yeah, don't be shy about making racks. Like they're the best. and then you just have these things you can just drag into your projects, and you make a collection of them over time. You've got your own palette of sounds, and it's yours. I think it's a great way to develop your own unique sound.
I have kind of an off-topic question. I started on Ableton back in '8. I did a pre-order on 9 Suite, and so I have 9, and then I upgraded that to 10, and then yesterday I just downloaded my 11. Do I now have technically 3 legal copies of Live, or do I just have 1 based on that original 9 license?
Well,
Because
those
at
were
this
all paid
point,
upgrades
they
to
were.
9, 10, 11. So you can keep all of them if you would like to. I do sort of do that. I don't go that far back, but if I were to go into my applications, I got 11 here now, and I just make a folder for Ableton, and I put the old ones in there. So I'll probably get rid of the beta here. I don't think I need that anymore, but I'll keep 10 around for a little while. But I like to just put it in the folder, just so it's sort of like out of the way. Is that what you mean?
Yeah, and well, I mean, I still want to use them because I have my 10 machine that I've been on. It's a Windows 7. I can't put 11 on it, but I just bought a new machine just for 11, and discovered how well Link works, and I have all of that
Oh,
figured
cool.
out.
Yeah.
And so, I just have, yeah, I just kind of wanted to confirm that yes, I'm actually legal on those three three
Yeah.
levels of license.
Yeah, and
Okay,
even
yeah, because
I believe
upgrades.
on Ableton's site you can actually download older versions of Live too.
You can. I still have them available, and technically you can authorize on two different machines
mhm.
for each license. And
Yeah.
okay,
Yeah, it should be good to go. I usually keep I only recently got rid of 9, and like I said, I'll probably get rid of the beta, but I'll keep 10 around because um, I'll be making as I'm making packs still. I'm gonna still use 10 for a little while because I don't want to leave anyone behind too soon. But I think when 10 came out last time, it was probably about like 6 months or so, and then I started going exclusively to 10. It gets to the point you just get so used to working in it, like, and you go back, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe like this isn't there anymore.
yeah, it's it's been interesting because Christmas we got a real good price on a couple of HP Omens at Costco for me and my wife, and she's on a you know uh, 8-year-old machine, Windows 7 that we've been on for a long time, and so and she's got a lot of genealogy stuff, and then I have
Hmm.
2 older machines that I replaced with that I'm adding this new Windows 10 home into, but it just just moving old machines and moving software and deciding I'm going to keep the new one a little bit more pristine than my
Hmm.
2 old ones as far as music and photography goes, but um, it's been a real challenge. And yeah, I have a laptop that's had Windows 10 on it for about for about a year, but I've never really had to bear down and really get under the hood of getting Windows 10 to work the way I want it to. And so in trying to set up her machine and then finally getting around to setting up my machine and like I say, now I just downloaded 11 and I got to put it on, and I just put 10 on the new machine, literally a week ago, and trying to sort out libraries, and because I have both 10 and 11 going to the same network drive for the library location, and I going to have
Hmm.
to look at it. Look at I have two machines going to the same library, but as I factor in and upgrade one of them to 11, I got to think through the folder structure and where the libraries are, and that was part of my earlier questions
Right.
about file management, because I'm in the throes of it right now. But it's a fun kind of problem to have, because part of the issue, and I think I mentioned it in our last one of our earlier sessions, is that uh, Ableton 11 only works on Windows 10, and my old Windows 7 setup I have going out to a Focusrite Sapphire Pro 40, and of course the FireWire
Hmm.
doesn't doesn't work with the or I mean the Sapphire will not work with
The new
Windows
machine, right?
10,
Yeah.
because it won't work. There's no FireWire drivers for Windows 10 or something. But so I have a Scarlet Scarlet 18 i20 for
Nice.
the Windows 10 machine, and I now have the Windows 7, my my legacy machine, going into the Sapphire, and I have the ADAT channels linked on them. So
Hmm.
I have the two Ableton sessions on linked together, and my MIDI controller going into both sessions. And so I have even more of a studio with less CPU load on each machine. And yeah, it's been fun.
Wow. Yeah,
It's
that's
been fun.
pretty cool.
So yeah, but I really do really enjoy these sessions with you. Even though the the online audience and the number of people who sit through them is always small. I do occasionally sit in on some other stuff, and of course all the YouTube stuff. But your program here is just, it's so much more casual and intimate, and I really appreciate it.
Oh, glad you like it, Joe. Thanks. Yeah, I love doing it. It's fun. I've always intended to be like an hour, and we always just keep going because it's fun, you know.
Yeah,
So, I like that. Just getting to talk and go over stuff, and um, I find it exciting myself anyway. Doing this, I'm like, oh yeah, and then you can do that. It reminds me sometimes, and it's cool to hear what you guys are doing. Like that sounds like a pretty wild setup you have. Those machines and then network drives and stuff.
yeah, it's a 20 25 year project. I mean,
Hmm.
before going all the way back to Commodore 64, and then in a Delta
Yeah,
sound
that's cool.
laptop, and it just keeps growing, and I still have audio files and MIDI files and sample files that are 20 years old, and about eight 8 terabytes of stuff that, and what at this point, it's just the more I learn about the tool set, the modern tool set, and every time I just go through some of my archives, I'll find stuff that I just some things that I was playing with, 15 years ago, and I bring it into the new hardware and run it through some of the Ableton tools, and it's just it's yeah, it's just an ongoing
Hmm.
adventure.
Yeah, what's old is new again, right?
Yeah, yeah,
I bet drop some of those, some of those old sample if you have the Commodore stuff to put in sampler. I mean, those are cool. You
yeah,
can have a lot of fun with that.
yeah,
Yeah, it all
yeah,
comes back to life. It's great.
yeah. And yeah, I have an OBXA that I've done some sampling off of, but it's just
Nice.
I don't have any room to have it set up.
Hmm.
But it's kind of frustrating because I know the sound that's there, but there's just so much available there in the software world that there's not. It's just so much of a hassle to pull that thing out and run the cables over to it and run it through the patch bay that you know,
I
it's
know what you mean.
trying
I
to pull
mean, I love that my hardware stuff too, and it sounds incredible and it's hard to match, but there's something about the convenience too.
yeah,
Can't
yeah,
deny it. Well, that's cool, but an Obi, yeah, that might be worth the trouble though.
yeah,
It's cool hearing you talk about hardware and stuff because it's not something that I've only really been doing music production not even a year yet, so it's all been software for me,
Hmm.
and I haven't really touched it at all. I even wonder what I was going to ask for either of you actually. I try and use mostly like samples and stuff, but obviously like things that I I always find myself using things that I've made myself. It's like this little thing that I feel like, oh, I can't use something someone else has created. I have to be, fully created myself or whatever. But obviously, there are amazing things that you can do uh, with hardware instruments and stuff like that. I play my guitar and stuff, so
Hmm.
but even other synthesizers and stuff like that. Where would you guys stand in your creativity in terms of like creating your instrument or using a synthesizer or something like that? I wonder.
What do you think, Joe?
I I I don't have any problems with using anything that's on my hard drives, but you change it up, you slice it up, you it's all fodder, and I have I have Casio CZ101. I have sounds off of that. I have an old EX5, and it has so many sounds of its own, and I will just play stuff into into Ableton directly out of my synthesizers and use that. But like I was saying earlier, I have I have samples and when you've been playing at this for a couple of decades, there have been some there's really rich rich sources of sounds online. I mean, there's the Synth Museum that has just all kinds of sounds, and there's of samples, and I'm sort of a I'm sort of a sample and software junkie. If it's out there, I grab it because you can without without stealing it, you can use it. You can you can break it up. You can put it through filters. You can grab the rhythm out of it. Um, but all of that being said, like I was saying earlier, as often as not, my starting point may be a sample or two, but I'll just sit down at my keyboard, my EX5, and I may bring in the sound from the EX5 to one of the audio channels, but I'm also putting some MIDI into a couple of other soft samplers, and and some of it may go together, some of it may not, and and then I'll go into a playback thing where maybe I'll try a different patch on one of the soft synths, or I may take the MIDI that was coming out and feed it back into my EX5 on a different patch. So it's just, it's kind of like the sculptors that say, they weren't creating something, they were just removing everything that wasn't what they wanted to wind up with. When you it's a removal process where you throw a bunch out there and then you start peeling away and trying to hone down. I mean, one of the things that I did in a former life decades ago was I made briar pipes, and you're just starting out with a block of wood, and you remove everything that's not the image that you had in your mind for that particular piece of wood. Or like I was saying with the stone sculptor, you just chisel away at this big chunk until you're left with what you want. And so I just start with 32 or even 64 bar riff, and just playing along something that sounds good, and just throwing out chords and recording it. And there's just so many tools in Ableton. I mean, you can take those MIDI things, and you can run them through, and force them into a key. You can sculpt it the way you want once you have something that you're starting with.
Yeah,
But that's just me.
That's cool. I think everyone kind of like draws their own line in the sand on what they think is okay and not. I mean, some people make entire tracks off of loops they find on Splice. There's nothing wrong with that, I don't think there's anything wrong with using presets. I mean, the piano, think about the piano, that's a preset, right? It's one sound.
Totally.
Acoustic guitar is like a preset. I don't see anything wrong with that, like using just a preset you found and not even tweaking it. If you want to, if it gives you like a sense of joy and pride to know that you recorded every sample in there, then that's cool too. I mean, what really matters is how the music turns out. So,
Yeah.
people set up their own rules and guidelines. I'm sure I have mine, and but I think really it's how's your music sound? Are you happy with that? Are you having fun? I think if a preset makes your life a little easier, then go for it. Why not? I've liked using there's some plugins that help you with your mixing. Isotope as like a mastering assistant on its ozone. Um, I like that stuff. It gives me a good starting point. I don't feel like I'm cheating or anything. People use auto tune. Is that cheating? Like, I don't know. I think it's a creative tool. So yeah, there's no
Yeah.
rule. Some people have like really fierce stances about what they think is right and wrong, but that's different for everybody.
I think once I started doing music production, I started really appreciating everything that everyone does, even if it's different, even if it's not. Because I can recognize that for now anyway. I do get that good feeling of sampling everything myself. But I love hearing other people's music. If they don't do that, if they do that, doesn't matter to me. That's only my personal preference, Whatever anyone else does, if it's good, it's good,
Yeah. And it can, I can get a lot of enjoyment out of music I don't even really like, just listening to the production aspect of it. So, I mean, there's a lot of music that I don't really want to listen to, but I can listen to it and really appreciate like the work that went into it, and how'd they even do that? And you can use that for your own stuff.
That's a cool thing.
Yeah, it's so cool. It's never ending, the fun you can have with this. At least as far as I could see, like what we talked about tonight with the sampler. I mean, you just never know what you're gonna get. And I've used Sampler a million times, and I feel I understand how it works really well. But even still, putting that bottle in there with the coffee bubbling, like I'm still surprised. Like, oh, cool! Like I didn't realize the coffee bubbling had that pitch to it. But we were able to find the note, and awesome, nice surprise. Yeah, go with the surprise. Have fun. Just make sure you're having fun. I would say, you know, make
One
sure you're
last
having
thing.
fun. You're if you're doing it for the money, there's a lot of other ways to make money a lot easier. So
Surely, yeah.
there's a much more surefire ways. Um, make sure you're having fun, and ironically, I think that really translates in the music, and people pick up on that. You can hear the fun people are having.
One last thing about music production. Just a couple of days ago, are either of you familiar with Osric Tentacles and Ed Wynn?
No, no.
Okay, Osric Tentacles, I think they were a British group, but Ed Wynn is a guitarist, synthesist, and they, they have all, they had very, very spacey, psychedelic, but extremely creative music since the late 80s. And I kind of stumbled onto them in 1993. I was in Chicago and went to Club Metro and just completely blew me away. And I got all their albums. But just recently, they released another Osric Tentacles album. But Ed Wynn is, like I say, is the guitarist and the synthesist and basically the producer of their music. And he just did an online interview or a YouTube interview. And if you just search YouTube for Ed Wynn, WYYNN, and Osric, Ozrak, and I think it was Sonic Scoop was the organization. I think he has a podcast or I'm not quite sure what Sonic Scoop is, but I just stumbled across it. I get some of their emails, but it's an hour long interview, and he talks about guitar production, guitar playing, and it's really one of the best interviews I've heard in a long time. There you go.
I think I found it. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's it, and it's well worth the time. And I enjoyed it because I discovered them a long time ago, and every time I mention it to people that I associate with who are not at all like-minded, they say, "Who? What's that all about?" But yeah, it's good stuff.
Nice. I'll check that out. Thanks. Looks cool.
I've been so busy. I was going to put a little link up to it on Discord, but I just haven't had any time in the last week or two. Yeah. Plus, I just got my second COVID shot vaccination today, so I'm looking forward to the side effects here in the next few days. But kind of fortunate.
I hope you don't get any of those.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Heard both sides of that. Some people do, some don't.
Your body's taking it seriously, so we're waiting.
Well, good luck with it all.
Okay. Yeah.
Cool. Well, guys, I'm gonna call it.
Hey.
It was awesome talking to you both and everyone else too. And we'll do it again soon. And I'll see you probably in the Discord, and let me know if you make anything cool with any of this stuff. I always love to hear it.
Will do, man. Thanks very much.
All right.
Thank you.
Have a great night, guys. Take care.